Hey there people, how you doing? So, today we have a camera comparison between the iPhone 12 and Galaxy S21 Ultra. Now, of course, this isn't the fairest of comparisons, that's understandable, the iPhone 12 isn't the top of the line iPhone that we have right now, so I will be mentioning where the iPhone 12 Pro or Pro Max could have done a slightly better job. Now, of course, for certain situations that is going to be the case, but for majority of the part, I think the iPhone 12 is going to stack up well enough to represent the latest iPhones. So without any further ado, let's get started because we have an absolute ton of images. So for our first image right here, well, I have to say the S21 Ultra does have high contrast, while the iPhone 12, due to its low contrast, it does have better shadow detail, like especially in the lower part of the image, it's very much visible. But, I'm still gonna go for the S21 Ultra simply because of how good the colors are on the S21. The iPhone, for some odd reason, it's just giving us no warmth at all. Like all of the beige and the warmer tones in the walls, the pillars, it's all gone. It's completely washed out and desaturated. It just doesn't look nice. This actually feels very different from the usual iPhone experience. Usually iPhones give us more warmth and the more natural colors. Now, for this main camera shot right here, well, the S21 Ultra definitely has better dynamic range. You can see right there in the highlights, so much of it is blown out on the iPhone. And as a matter of fact, the S21 does have slightly higher contrast, which, in this context at least, it looks just a little bit nicer. And once again, we have that completely washed out look in terms of all the warmer tones. You can see it on that weird wing-like thing and then on the walls. It's quite visible on the iPhone 12 as to how desaturated everything looks. Now this image right here, well, it's very natural on the iPhone 12, contrary to before, because earlier on none of this warmth was even available to us. Now, the iPhone 12 seems to have gotten back on track. But as a matter of fact, the S21 Ultra does look a little bit more pleasing, I just want to say. It's simply because of its higher contrast, has slightly higher vibrance. I don't think there is any other realistic difference here. The details and everything are very similar. But because of the higher contrast, the S21 does look a little bit more punchy and, again, a little bit more pleasing. Now let's move on to an interesting set of images. This is high-res 108 megapixels on the S21 Ultra versus the regular 12 megapixels on the iPhone 12. Now, the S21, I had expected it to have much worse dynamic range because, it's a massive amount of megapixels, so it seems that unlike any other Samsung flagships before, at least from 2020, the 108 megapixels mode has much better dynamic range now. That's very nice to see, to be honest, because it just gives us such a nice crisp image without sacrificing anything really. Now, overall, the iPhone does look a little bit more natural, but I do like how the building looks on the S21 Ultra. Not only is it a billion times more detailed, or maybe 100 times more detailed, but anyways, you get the point. And the colors, I do like how the blues look on the S21 Ultra. Now, of course, zooming in a little, you can see exactly how much more detail we have right there. And speaking of zoom, we have 3x zoom right here. This is broad daylight, and I gotta say the S21 Ultra, although not as natural as the iPhone 12 in terms of the colors, I do like how it's giving us a much more vibrant and punchy looking image instead of a very natural, sure, but also a very flat image as a whole. Now this could be personal preference, but I do like the S21 Ultra as a whole. Well, not to mention that the detail because of optical zoom is vastly superior on the S21 Ultra. Now, as I said before, the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max with 2 and 2.5 times optical zoom respectively will be slightly better and slightly more on par with the S21 Ultra in terms of the medium zoom ranges. This is a 5x zoom, that is the maximum the iPhone 12 can do, and once again Pro and Pro Max would have been much more similar to the S21 Ultra right here, but similar differences apply. Colors a little bit more to my preference on the S21 Ultra, and details without a question much better on the S21 Ultra. But the moment we move on to 10x zoom on the S21 Ultra, it's purely optical, and it's an amazing feat, to be honest, because this kind of quality, it's very hard to come by. And well, none of the iPhones, as a matter of fact, can do this, and none of them can achieve this form of sharpness or clarity as the S21 Ultra. Now for 30x zoom, well, it's not the best looking image in the world, obviously. It's quite a lot of digital zoom along with optical, so you can see a little bit of artifacting in the sky and all that, but it's still a fairly nice and usable image. As for 100x zoom, well yeah, it's not usable, that much is for certain, but it's still quite a nice image considering that it is 100 times zoom. Now, 100 times zoom does have its use cases. I'll talk about it at the very last image, if I'm not wrong, and you'll understand why. Just stick around till the end. Now, moving indoors. Now, this was a very interesting shot. The reason I took this shot even was to just see how diffusion functions on the iPhone 12 and whether or not it would give better detail and all that. But it appears that the iPhone 12 completely screwed up the image because those lights look wrong entirely. They were not white, they were warm, like on the S21 Ultra. And I gotta say, the S21 Ultra is doing a fantastic job in terms of giving us both amazing detail and amazing realistic colors as a whole. The iPhone, for some reason, very desaturated like we had seen in the first one or two images, and obviously the warmth is completely washed out of the image. But the moment we move on to the ultra wide camera right here, the problem is not present. So I'm not entirely certain what is going on with the iPhone and whether or not this is just a software bug that might just get fixed with the next update we get. But you know what, it's not a problem here, so let's just talk about the differences. So first and foremost, I do think there is just a little bit more highlight preservation on the S21 Ultra. It's visible in some of those incandescent signs, but overall I gotta say both are doing a fantastic job. And as a matter of fact, I do think that the S21 Ultra's processing is more than enough to keep up with deep fusion on the iPhone 12. Now that was not the case before, so it's nice to see that processing has really taken a step up in the S21 Ultra. Another indoor shot, and once again a similar kind of story. You can see that the iPhone 12 is washing out a lot of the warmth. It's not as bad as before, but there are two things on the iPhone 12 that I just do not like. Firstly, there's that lens refraction, and that is not a problem on the S21 Ultra, not in the slightest. But there's also the complete and utter lack of contrast. You can see the blacks right there, they just do not look nice. It's completely grey on the iPhone, and the S21, as a matter of fact, looks fantastic. The contrast, the colors, it's just an amazing image as a whole. Now for one of the most harshly backlit images we have for this comparison right here. Well, I didn't expect the iPhone 12 to be so bad. Look, it's completely blowing out every highlight out there, like the table, the light obviously, and the shadows. Just look at how much haze, and it just doesn't look good. There's no detail, the shadows don't have any proper colors. It's just not a good image. The S21, it surpassed my expectations. Like, look at how much of those highlights are preserved. It's the exact opposite of the iPhone 12, and in a very, very good way. Like, the amount of colors and details that we can get in the shadows, that is the subject, which is, by the way, Valentine, well, it's phenomenal to say the least. Now, one thing I do want to touch on before we move on to selfies, the S21 Ultra does have a macro mode now. It uses the ultra-wide camera, and that is, in my opinion, the best possible way at this very moment to do macro photography. Instead of using a crappy 2 megapixel lens, this one uses the much high quality ultra-wide angle camera, and that is just, look at the image right there. It's fantastic. This, by the way, is a texture on the back of the dual sense controller for the PS5, and it's just such an amazing texture, and the image as such is so good. Now moving on to this image, now there are a few discrepancies here. Basically, the image on the screen in the iPhone's image, as you can see, is very warm, so it's just imparting a lot of warmth that you can see in the iPhone, while the S21 Ultra, because of the fact that the screen does not have any warmth and it's giving off cool tones, the image is very cool. So as a matter of fact, the iPhone 12 does have slightly more vibrant, more pleasing skin tones. It's not the most natural, but you know, the conditions are different, so I can't really comment on skin tones as a whole. But I gotta say, the details on the S21 Ultra, man, I think that Samsung finally made a selfie camera worthy of taking some of the most detailed selfies that I have ever seen. I think at this point, the S21 Ultra gives you one of the, if not the most detailed selfies out there. Like, the iPhone, it is slightly, ever so slightly smudging out some of the details on my face. The S21, it's giving you just boatloads of it. And I cannot stress how good that is. The fact that there is no skin smoothing, it's quite an achievement if you ask me. Now, for a 40 megapixel selfie from the S21 Ultra, I do not think I have to mention just how incredibly detailed the S21 Ultra looks. But I gotta say, the iPhone 12 is really brightening up everything in the image. Like, I look super bright, that's one thing, and there is no contrast across my face. I'm not very pleased with that, but it's just a style of images from the iPhones. One thing I do not like on the iPhone is the color of my t-shirt. It does not look natural. It is way too bright. It was much darker and very much similar to the S21 Ultra's colors right there. Now, for a crazy high contrast right there, there's a studio light that's lighting just a small part of my face while the rest of it is in the shadows. And well, both are doing a fantastic job, I gotta say. But the iPhone 12, although it doesn't give you as much details, it does help in preserving just a tad bit more highlights on the very far corner of my face. But I'm still gonna go for the S21 Ultra because not only are the details just fantastic, there is no warm cast in the image, which I do appreciate. Secondly, the skin tones, just look at how accurate and nice it looks on the S21 Ultra. I don't think the Samsung flagships as a whole have ever really had such good skin tones, but it's really nice to see that the S21 Ultra is catching up to the likes of iPhones. And the main reason why I'm going for the S21 Ultra is because on the right side of the image, the iPhone 12 is completely faded out. It might be because of the studio light, but it just does not look nice. The S21 is handling that much better. Now for a portrait selfie in a similar lighting condition, and we can quite easily see just how much of a toll portrait selfies take, because all that crazy dynamic range that we had, especially on the S21 Ultra, is gone. Like all the shadows, especially on my face, they're very crushed. I'm not a huge fan of that, but the iPhone is also doing a similar kind of job, although not as crazy. But I'm still gonna go for the S21 Ultra because not only do we get some of the best looking details on my t-shirt, but even though the iPhone is giving better highlight control, it's once again completely faded, and I cannot handle that look. It just does not look nice. The S21, it just looks better to my eyes. Now for a portrait selfie in medium lighting, and well, edge detection, as a matter of fact, both of them missed out just that little bit portion of the wall between my face and my hair, so that's kind of interesting. But the iPhone did miss out a little bit of my hair on the right as well, so I think edge detection overall, I want to give it to the S21 Ultra, at least for this image. Now colors, the S21 Ultra is much more natural, while the iPhone is a little bit more flattering, but it's not as natural as the S21 Ultra. So that's kind of interesting to see. This has never really happened before. Now for a rear camera portraits with again the similar kind of harsh lighting conditions, and well, the problem with the iPhone here is that it is very warm and it's not very natural. Like you can see the whites in the background, they look much more realistic in the S21 Ultra. Now the skin tones, however, I do kind of like it on the iPhones, but the S21 isn't doing that bad a job. And well, the sheer fact that you get better details and all that on the S21, overall, I think I'm leaning towards the S21 Ultra. There's also, once again, that faded look, this time on the left side of the image for the iPhone 12, and it really surprises me just how much of that light the S21 Ultra can handle, while the iPhone, it just makes everything look faded. Now for a medium lighting portrait, well, I'm just gonna go for the iPhone. It has way too much and way too beautiful bokeh balls right there. The S21 for some odd reason doesn't have anything out there. I just like the iPhone's image so much more. Now, I do want to say that the S21 again looks a little bit more natural in terms of the lighting situation, but the iPhone just looks so good. Now for night mode portraits, well, this is a feature that is available for the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max, presumably because of the LiDAR scanner, and it is now also available for the S21 Ultra. Now, of course, do not mind that complete red hue that we have on my face. It's simply because of the super dim warm light that I had. It was the only dim light I had around, so that's kind of like the result of an amplification of all that red. So yeah, it's actually very good on the S21 Ultra, and what surprises me is that the iPhone 12 didn't even manage to take a portrait mode image, much less a night portrait. Now this image right here, I think this has the biggest difference between the S21 Ultra and the iPhone 12 as a whole. Now you may not believe it, but we did take this image under similar lighting conditions. Like, it blows my mind just how much light can be captured by the S21 Ultra's night mode portraits. Now do keep in mind this particular feature is not available on the iPhones, so all of your iPhones, whether it's the Pro or Pro Max, it'll give you the exact same result that the iPhone 12 is giving right here. As for regular selfies, we do have night mode on both of these, but yeah, the iPhone 12 is just horrible right here. I took this image like 20 times and each and every time it came out this artifacty, oversharpened mess. It's got no contrast, it's got no detail, just oversharpening all over the place, especially visible on my shirt. And can I just say, my shirt somehow managed to change colors right there. Like, how weird is that? Anyways, the S21 Ultra is doing a much better job. Although I do gotta mention, the overall skin tones are much better on the iPhone 12 compared to a super bright look on the S21 Ultra. I had noticed this before as well, so I hope they fix this in a software patch. Like, you don't really have to brighten me up that much. Now for night mode of Valentine, this is with the rear camera, and the lighting situation was a little interesting. I wanted to see how either of these would handle it. So we do have a white light that's lighting up the entire table, and a very dim warm light at the far left corner. And you can see some of that on the S21 Ultra and the chair a little bit on Valentine, but the table is very accurate in terms of maintaining the white color. Now the iPhone did screw this up a little. I had expected that to happen, but I don't really expect the S21 Ultra to be this accurate. So the iPhone, as you can see, it's completely warm. The whole image has this warm cast over it, which does not exactly look nice. Secondly, the amount of detail that you can get on Valentine is staggeringly higher on the S21 Ultra. I mean, the S21 is clearly better here. Now for ultra-wide night mode, well, the iPhone's got the feature, but it's just horrible. I mean, look, I get it. The iPhone 12, it has ultra-wide night mode. It was introduced last year, and well, I was one of the most excited people on the planet probably. But as you can see, and as you saw before as well, the night modes on selfie and ultra-wide are just not good. I'm very disappointed in the fact that not only did we not have good night modes at launch, but even after so many months and so many software updates, Apple did not even fix this. So on the other hand, we have the S21 Ultra with one of the best night modes in terms of ultra-wides. Another thing that I found out is that you can actually take macro photos with the S21 Ultra. Now this is obviously something that the iPhone 12 cannot do. I'm moving on to main camera night mode, and I want to see which one of these would give the cleaner sky, and surprisingly, neither the S21 nor the iPhone gave us a super clean sky. Both have just a small amount of artifacting in the skies, which, is surprising because the iPhone in particular gives some of the cleanest skies in any smartphone that I've used. In this situation, at least, even after taking like 5 or 6 shots, the results were the same. So I'm not entirely sure what is driving the iPhone to give us so much artifacting in the sky, but anyways, the overall colors definitely look better and much more natural on the S21 Ultra, whereas there is once again a very warm cast overall on the iPhone 12. Now we do have 3x optical zoom with the S21 Ultra in night mode. This is again gonna be a feature that you can get for the 12 Pro and Pro Max with their higher zoom ranges. It's not possible on the iPhone 12, but 10x zoom. Now that is quite a feature, because imagine this handheld 10x night mode. The fact that you can get an actual image, that's quite a staggering achievement if you ask me. Now finally we have the moon, because an image like this at 30x zoom, just look at how much textures and detail of the moon is visible. The processing is definitely doing a ton of heavy lifting right here. Then we move on to 100x zoom and just look at the size of that. Obviously it's not the sharpest image of the moon on the planet, but it's still staggeringly amazing considering that this was taken at 100x zoom with a smartphone. Like that's impressive if you ask me. So that is it for this comparison, and I gotta say, the S21 Ultra's cameras are definitely impressive. This comparison right here, it kind of proves that the S21 Ultra, sure, it improved in certain ways and has more features, but I particularly like the fact that we have much better consistency and are much more inclined towards the more natural, realistic colors, especially when it comes to skin tones. I feel like the S21 Ultra's cameras are so refined. It's almost like a refreshing take for Samsung cameras as a whole, because last year with the S20 Ultra, like, it wasn't exactly a very successful camera that phone had. Like, man, it had problems. But overall, I do think that the S21 Ultra's cameras as a whole, in terms of dynamic range, the colors, skin tones, realistic look, and detail as a whole, not to mention the 108 megapixel mode with the much better and enhanced dynamic range, it's all so much better and so much more streamlined that I think the S21 Ultra's cameras are the cameras, a refined set of cameras that Samsung had intended for the S20 Ultra, but it's just 1 year late. Anyways, I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.